Guys, can you believe it? We're almost at the end of Katie Thurston's season of The Bachelorette 17. Stay tuned. Let's get into the Men Tell All. Hi there, Simpli Subbies. Welcome back to the Simply Stacey YouTube channel. It's your girl Stacey, and we are on week number 8 of The Bachelorette season 17. This is the Men Tell All. They do go into a slight... looks like it's going to start off as an episode, but then someone actually goes home, and then they go ahead and go straight into the Men Tell All. So let's get right down to it. I'm not going to do a play-by-play, but we will get into what happens beforehand, and then all those guys that were in the hot seat, anything funny I think that may have come up or anything of interest, but I'm not going to go word for word into this, but I cannot wait, guys. We're almost to the final guys. We were at 4 guys remaining. There was Michael A, there was Justin, there was Greg, and there was Blakey. You know, guys, Blake is my top number 1, but I think Greg may be Katie Thurston's number 1, but I guess we'll see when we get all the way down to it. I think those two have the makings of the top 2 for sure. So it starts off with Michael A, and he is having a FaceTime call with his son. And, you know, he's had these before. It's always so emotional. But in this particular call, his son does say, "Dad, why don't you want to see me anymore?" Now, mind you, you guys recall that he is a widower. His wife passed away from cancer. His son is so young. I don't even believe he's 5 years old. I can't remember how young his son is, James, but his son is very young. And so it breaks his heart to hear that, and he definitely doesn't want his son feeling that way or feeling like mommy never came back, daddy may never come back. It's probably been, he's still around and we're almost at the end, so it's probably been close to 2 months that he has been gone. He's only FaceTiming him, and he's staying at home, I guess, with his grandparents. It is hometowns, and I think instead of them actually going, the families are coming, but of course his son is so young, he's not trying to introduce him to Katie before it's officially a thing, and it's just the two of them at the end. So his son is not there this week. It would just be, I guess, she would be maybe meeting his parents, but not his son. And so it's weighing on him heavily because he doesn't even get to see his son. So in that moment, I was like, well, I probably would have flew my son out, and a babysitter or one of the parents could have stayed with his son, so he could have gotten a chance to spend time with his son. It probably would have put everything back into perspective and given him a little bit of home and not feel that way about his son, and maybe just never have introduced him to Katie, but he could have come along on the trip for the ride. That's just personally probably what I would have talked to the producers about doing, if that was at all possible. But again, it was COVID. He probably didn't want his son exposed to any of that stuff, or flying or traveling or any of that stuff. So it hurts his heart. Leaves off the conversation after talking to his son, crying. A producer gives him a hug, and then he has to go and talk to Katie. Because basically what Michael A tells her is, you know, you've opened me up to love. I really do think that we could be something special, but I have to be a good dad. And basically, Katie is blindsided. She didn't see it coming. She was surprised to see him. She didn't know where he was going to go with this conversation. He lets her know what his son said, and she is very sad. She's like, you know what? I did see us going to the end. I really like you. I saw me, you, and James, you know, kind of sort of being a family, and I just really wasn't expecting this. But she tells him he's a great dad, and she sees where he's coming from and why he has to go home. I think there could have been some other things. Basically, he said it has nothing to do with you, why I'm leaving. I know that we're so close to the end, because honestly, guys, it's about 2 episodes left. So maybe 2 more weeks left. You have hometowns, which they were in hometowns. So his family was going to come visit, and then it was going to be meeting her family, and then the final where they pick. So he could have been around, but he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go home. And so he leaves, and she tells him, you know, I'm kind of like, tells the confessional that I'm kind of sad, I'm kind of angry, but I understand he is a good dad, and I'll just have to move forward. So now Michael A is gone, and there are 3 guys left. You have Justin, you have Blake, and you have Greg left. But we don't go into the rest of the episode. We'll have to see that next week. Right now, it is the Men Tell All, and they had to show us how Michael A. left so we can see why he is on the Men Tell All, or why he doesn't have to wait to the final rose, after the final rose, because he actually went home a week earlier than predicted, or than should be, because he was in the top 4. So here I am again, like, girl, Katie, you could have really kept Andrew around because Michael A. was going to leave anyway. You would have had top 4. But anyway, she has her top 3. And so you know how the Men Tell All is. The guys are all there with the host, and Tayshia and Caitlyn, just like in the season, are hosting the show. You know, normally that is a Chris Harrison role, but he is definitely no longer a part of the Bachelor franchise. There's actually a live studio audience, which we have not had in over a year. Everything has been like in quarantine and you know, virtual and all that kind of stuff. So there are people there, which is always a good thing because they have their reactions. They get to pan and see their faces and their expressions. And so it's really kind of cool. I'm assuming they all took COVID tests prior to being let into the audience, but no one makes that statement, so who knows. But I would assume so, especially because the cast and stuff always have to do COVID tests beforehand. So at the Men Tell All, we have Courtney with the Q, Cody, Carl, Trey, Brendan, James, Kyle, Aaron, Connor B, Hunter, Andrew S, and then Michael A. So they are all there. And again, like I said, we had to see how Michael A went home so we can see why he's on the show, because if not, we would have been expecting him to be still on the season and he wouldn't have made it to the Men Tell All. Tayshia does start with a, you know, a nice little lighthearted comment. What was it like when you first met Katie? I think Trey and Connor expressed, you know, how beautiful she was and how cool it was to meet her, how maybe nervous they were and stuff like that. And then they go into the footage of a controversial reel. So basically anybody that had a problem on the show, all the villains, you see Carl, you see Thomas, you see Hunter, you see Aaron, Trey, and James and everybody's business and talking about why these guys ain't here for the right reasons. So they show all of that from the season, and Aaron talking to Cody and how he's like, you rubbed me the wrong way. They did ask Aaron, like, what made you call Cody out that early on? You guys knew each other from San Francisco. We see the clip of Cody saying she doesn't even know we know each other, like, let's just not talk about it, like we don't have to talk about it. He's like, he's just rubbed me the wrong way in different settings and scenarios, and he's just disrespectful. And so the thing is, what the bottom line is, Aaron and Cody did not personally know one another. They apparently ran in the same circles. They were always somewhere together, and he just didn't like how Cody, you know, moved. On Cody's story, 6 months prior to the Bachelorette starting, he said, I'm going to be famous in 6 months. Aaron is like, you're going to be on the Bachelorette in 6 months. So he's like, he was always there to be famous. That's what he was talking about on Instagram before he got there. And, you know, so he really just didn't like him. They have not made up, and that is that. Then everybody starts talking about Carl and how Carl told her, you know, he drops the bomb, like, Katie, there are multiple people not here for the right reasons. And of course, somebody did come out, a couple people, or at least one, maybe Hunter and then Thomas, after Carl left. And they apparently weren't there for the right reasons. At least the guys saw it that way. And Katie eventually did the same thing. So basically, Carl uses this opportunity to say, yep, I knew it. Which we're like, Carl, you literally made that up. You had no idea. He's like, I was privy to stuff you guys hadn't heard in conversations, and I knew. So, of course, it was Thomas. They like what you said, multiple people. Now you saying it's Thomas. That's Troy calling him out. First you said it was most people. Now you saying it's Thomas. We don't believe you. Courtney basically said, I definitely don't believe that that's who you thought it was at the time. You didn't know. You just made some stuff up. But he goes back and forth with them for a little bit. And Brendan still thinks that Carl is a snake. So Brendan and Carl kind of go back and forth and get into it. And he's like, you know, Brendan's only out here because Blake told him that it was a free ticket to the U.S. and also that he can drink all the beer you want to drink. So remember, Brendan was Canadian. So here's the other part of that. Remember when Brendan got eliminated? he went and said goodbye to Blake, and I was so confused. But apparently Brendan and Blake have known each other for a long time, and Blake told Brendan he should go on The Bachelorette, and they used to play hockey together for years. So they've played hockey together for a lot of years. So now it makes more sense that he went to go say bye to Blake, because I'm like, he didn't say bye to none of the other guys. He just literally went to Blake's door, they said bye, they gave each other a hug, and then he left. So that makes more sense now that we know that they were friends prior to the show even starting. So the guys keep on talking about Thomas, and then Hunter says that he doesn't think that Thomas is a bad person. James basically is like, does anybody think Thomas is a bad person? We're not saying he's a bad person. We just say he wasn't here for the right reasons. James said that he did call Hunter a Thomas 1.5. Basically, he's half the size and twice the bleep. So I don't know what the heck that means, but it was definitely an expletive that they had to beep out because this is ABC, and you just can't be out here cussing like that. So anyway, it seems like they didn't have such a good vibe. Hunter says that he did not lie. So then he goes back to his reel where they had him talking to the drag queen, and then up there saying, "Are you in love with Katie?" He says, "No, I don't think we've been knowing each other long enough for me to say that yet." And then flip to when they're actually in front of everybody and they say, "How do you feel about Katie?" He says, "I'm actually falling in love with Katie." And so Trey is like, yeah, technically you didn't lie because the questions were posed differently, but wouldn't you have said that when the drag queen asked you, as opposed to waiting until that particular moment? You were being extra calculated per usual. Connor B steps up for Hunter. Nobody has stepped up for Hunter in the past. But anyway, Connor B steps up and he says that Hunter was his roommate the entire time. And what he will tell you guys is he was falling for Katie. Regardless if Hunter will admit it or not, he was falling for her. So he may have also been a Bachelor super fan, but he wasn't necessarily there for the wrong reasons. He wasn't really trying to get famous off of it. He just wanted to be with Katie, and he watched enough shows that he had a little bit of, things he could do to stick around longer. And his problem was that he showed his hands. He shouldn't have told anybody. He should have just kept all that information to himself. But being in the house so long with just all these men, he might feel like he can open up to some of them and it wouldn't come back to bite him, which it absolutely did. And he did prematurely go home. Next up is the hot seat. So they call Connor B up to the hot seat, and they play his whole reel. You can see he's emotional. He is, visibly still hurt by his breakup with Katie. He puts him back in the same mindset he was when she eliminated him. He was so into it. Apparently there was this kissing situation and it was a bad kiss. And so, yeah. He says he thinks it started out good. He doesn't know how did it go so wrong from there. And here's the thing. Katie is a good friend of his. She likes him in a friendly manner. She's not attracted to him. They kissed and they kept kissing. She never felt the spark. It wasn't necessarily about him being a bad kisser. It was just that there was no connection or spark attached to it. She wasn't attracted to him. Point blank, period. It doesn't make you a bad guy. You still can go and date whoever you want to date. He was the guy who originally showed up in the cat suit and they hit it off from there. But she never got them like, I'm into him vibes. So then there's a woman in the audience who wants to interrupt and say how adorable Connor is. He was like, oh, that's so funny. I was like checking you out when I was sitting up there earlier. And she was like, I did kind of notice you checking me out. And she said, I don't think you're just a bad kisser. So of course the guys all egg him on. It was like, kiss her. So I'm like, they had to have COVID tests. Because who out here kissing people, random strangers in the audience, and you have a COVID test? But they say, hey, let's give it a shot. They make out for a minute now. They make out real good. And she said, wow, like it was a pretty good kiss. And Connor did say that he did hit up a few of the people he've kissed in the past to ask, was he a bad kisser? And his ex was like, no, you're a good kisser. It was just, it's more to that, like the spark or something like that. It wasn't that you are a bad kisser. He kisses this chick in the audience. He's like, okay, what's your name? After he kisses her, she sits down on the couch. When I say Tayshia and Caitlin are like, oh my God, like what is happening? The men are just like cheering them on, like, yeah, Connor, go Connor, get it, Connor. He asked her for her number when they leave the stage. So I'm like, okay, he not with nobody. Because that could have been real awkward. Because a lot of these people, once they get kicked off the show, they go find real relationships, and they be in relationships before the mental all even comes. So apparently he's single still, because he's like, I do want to get your number or whatever. She goes back to the audience, and her name was Tara. But that basically ends her time on stage. Next up in the hot seat is Andrew S. And again, he has very stone face, like a poker face. But he too is, he's feeling the breakup with Katie as he watches it replay itself on screen. And, I have just always liked Andrew S. And I still really like him. And he's still my vote for the next Bachelor. But he looks like he's enjoying the real when they're laughing and having a good time and, falling for one another. And then, he looks very somber when it does get to the point to where, she's eliminating him or he comes back and he decides not to stay and all of that stuff. And he just says, it just means it was real. They said, we can tell that, you're kind of affected by the clips. And he's like, yeah, it just means that it was really real for both of us. But at the end of the day, I do want somebody to choose me. And Tayshia says, you deserve someone that does choose you and someone will. He's like, I hope so. He's like, basically, I'm a hopeless romantic. I grew up with my mom watching rom-coms. And he said he basically gave his all and he wanted to see if they could fall in love, which he thinks they came pretty damn close. So, it is what it is. He's also a stellar guy. And they all have nothing but nice things to say about Katie. Nobody is like, she led me on, all this stuff. Nobody is saying that, which is really cool. Next up in the hot seat is Michael A. Now, you guys know who I'm surprised is not there is Michael P. He was the virgin and there was a lot of stuff around him, but he does not show up, so they don't bring him up at all. But Michael A is there. He's the last one who eliminated himself, self-eliminated. He's very, very emotional watching the reel, and he said he could say that it took him back to the time when that all happened. But the truth of the matter is he never really got out of that place. He's still very much in love with Katie, and if things were different or if she wanted a second chance, he'd definitely be up for that. But it is harder for him watching it, because the decision had nothing to do with her, but because he just needed to be a good father. And he said him and Katie always have this thing, if it's meant to be, then it definitely will be. That's the end of Michael A. Coming up there, you guys know Katie will come out a little bit later. But in the meantime, Tayshia has a surprise for Caitlyn. So she has her fiance, Jason, who is another Bachelorette alum. He was on somebody's season, I think Becca Koofman's season of The Bachelorette. And then afterwards, after Caitlyn's season, his season, they decided to do a podcast together. They fell in love. And he actually proposes to her earlier this year. And they have it all caught on camera. He was going to co-host the podcast with her. And they're looking for the person. And Caitlyn's like, hey, are you there? Are you there? And he's like, there's no guest. And then he proposes to her. It's so cute, so romantic. Everybody's like tearing up. It's so cute. And that's never before seen footage. So I guess they hadn't showed that before. And so it's really cute to see some other Bachelor couples that are just so in love. So Katie actually comes out. She looks at all the guys, She's like, oh, you guys all look so good. I don't love her dress, but I haven't loved her fashion since the entire season. Now, Tayshia and Kayla look cute in their dresses. They have a color scheme going on, and Katie's standing out in her, green dress. The color looks nice. It's an okay dress. It just, it's nothing that just, pops her out other than the color of it in contrast to theirs. But, they have on sequins and, they're stars in their own right, and so they definitely standing out on this. But anyway, so she comes out and she tells Michael A that she likes his beard. He's grown a beard since he left the show, and I think it does make him look a little bit more distinguished. They ask Michael how's it to see Katie. He goes into how much of a great person she is, and how he just is being very kind of light with it, not getting too deep into I still feel like where I was when I left and all that stuff. He didn't say all that, but of course Tasha has to call him out, put him on Front Street. And so she said, so Katie, we were just talking to Michael, and he did say he would give you a second chance. Basically, if you gave him one, he would be here for it. And Katie basically shut that down. And I'm like, go ahead, girl, because apparently the show has continued. She didn't pick somebody or something. And she said, well, you know what? I had to move on. I couldn't stay in that place. And that's the honest to God truth. She kept moving, and she was already feeling these other people. Now, he may have been who she was, you know, at her number one at that moment. But when he leaves, all it does is give those other guys a chance to move into the number one position. But I still don't think he was ever her number one. I think he was in top two, top three. Yeah. If I would have called it, I would have said Blake, Greg, and then Michael A, and then Justin. So she moves on from that. She doesn't even get entwined into that. I think they do ask Andrew S again. He basically says he seconds everything that Michael A said as far as her being a great person, and she made a man out of him, and he has no regrets. That's basically what Andrew S said. He said, yeah, of course it's hard for me to watch, but he wishes her well and nothing but the best and hopes she finds love. And she says that she cannot wait to see what life has in store for Andrew S. And then next up, Trey wants to talk. You can tell, you know, he ain't have a whole lot to say, but he want to get his voice heard on the Men Tell All. I mean, he had a lot to say when it came to the shenanigans, but not really when it came to him and Katie's relationship. But basically, he says his time was mostly spent in conflict, and he did want to let her know, though, that some of the conversations they had were good. They didn't all revolve around Thomas and Hunter and all that stuff, and she helped to make him better for the next girl. And then Aaron also speaks up and says, yes, him too. All of his stuff basically was around conflict with Cody, and then Thomas, and then Hunter. But he had the best intentions, and you know, he always had her best interest at heart, and he'll always be in her corner. And she's like, thanks, Thomas. I'm like, Katie, was that on purpose? Was that a mistake? Like, I don't even know, but I guess she probably was like, only time we ever talked, we was talking about Thomas. So then Kaylin and Tasha, they're laughing, and it's like, oh, it happens. But I'm thinking, like, after the whole season, you can't remember this man's name, and he talks to you a whole lot. But I was like, I don't know if it was a mistake or not. But she didn't apologize for calling him Thomas, so it could have just been her playing like, that's all you talked about, so I'm going to call you Thomas. But she does. She says, he runs off. She does say, oh, I'm sorry. And he was like, why am I even here? Like, basically, you don't even know my name at this point. Connor B stands up and says, do we think, you know, he always had that little ding banjo. And he said, y'all think I was going to leave here without another song? So he makes up this song basically about bromance. And so after all of it, he at least found 30 guys that he can have a bromance with. It made him believe in bromances. And so, yeah, the song was not that great. I'm like, please stick to your day job of being a math teacher. And, yeah. So basically, Katie says that it was an untimely departure for Carl because she wasn't necessarily getting ready to let him go when she did. But to be perfectly honest, the opinion of the other guys meant more to her than his opinion did at that moment. So it wasn't like she was just so gung-ho about him. So she did send him home. So it just is what it was. And then Thomas does come on the video chat. I don't know why he's not there live in studio. I doubt that it was anything about the guys was going to fight him if they seen him or anything. Maybe he got a COVID positive test. I'm not sure. But he was dressed up. He didn't address anything from the guys. They didn't address any lingering questions with him. They basically just let him and Katie talk it out. And he basically said everything that happened still, you know, it kind of just sits with him. He does apologize for bringing any doubt into her process or her journey to find love. And he didn't understand why she changed or when things changed for her. And she basically tells him that when he was like sitting there talking to her, giving her this speech that it sounds like he prepared, it just didn't come off as genuine to her. And so that's when things changed. So basically, she's not even saying that the guys changed it for her. I'm sure they had a little bit to do with it, but really what changed it for her was when he was talking to her, it sounded really rehearsed like a speech and very disingenuous. He says he respects that and he was grateful for the journey. He knows that she did what was best for her and apologizes if it caused him any pain. And that is the end of Thomas, guys. He signs off. That is also basically end of the Men Tell All. They do the blooper reel, which is always fun and cute to watch with the bugs and, you know, all this other stuff going on. And they did show upcoming scenes for next week when they have the hometown dates. And there's a lot going on. There was a moment where Katie ran into the bathroom of her place and Caitlin's at the door and she's like, I want to take it home. There's a part when Greg is like, if it's not real, then forget the rose. Who cares about the rose or the next date or this if it's not real? There's a moment where Blake is saying he hasn't told her he loves her. And somebody's like, what if the other guys have? You know, you need to tell her. So there's a lot going on with these last three guys. Her final three are down to Blake, Greg, and Justin. So we will see how this all unfolds. And then there's always Bachelor in Paradise. So I will be doing those reviews as well. That starts August the 15th. I am super excited. So go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you can always be notified each and every time I post. That way you won't miss any of my new reviews that come out. We're also currently reviewing Married at First Sight season 13 and Put a Ring on It season 2 that comes on the OWN network. So yes, please come back and see us. Until next time, see ya.